A man stands in front of his entire team being accused of something he did not do. Everyone is staring at him, waiting for him to break down and beg for mercy. But he does something no one expects. He stays completely silent, looks his accuser in the eye, and smiles. Within seconds, the room shifts. The accuser stumbles over his own words, and the truth reveals itself without him saying a single thing. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me, and please like and subscribe for more videos like this. David walks into the conference room on a Tuesday morning. The air feels heavy, thick with tension he cannot yet name. His manager, Richard, sits at the head of the table with his arms crossed, his jaw clenched tight. 6 other colleagues are already seated, their eyes darting between him and Richard. He takes his usual seat near the window, sets down his notebook, and waits. Richard clears his throat and leans forward. His voice cuts through the silence like a blade, sharp and accusatory. He says David has been leaking confidential project details to a competitor, that the evidence is clear and undeniable. The words hang in the air like poison, spreading through the room. Every pair of eyes in the room locks onto David, watching, judging, waiting for his reaction. Some look shocked, others skeptical, a few almost satisfied, as if they had been waiting for this moment. David feels his heart rate spike. His hands want to shake, but he keeps them still on the table, gripping the edge just enough to steady himself. Every instinct in his body screams at him to defend himself, to explain, to prove his innocence with facts and logic. This is the moment most people crumble. This is where the trap closes, and the victim becomes powerless. This is the exact moment Richard expects him to panic, to beg, to justify his existence in front of everyone. But David does something different. He takes a slow, deep breath and stays completely silent. He does not open his mouth, does not frantically search for words or explanations, simply looks at Richard with calm, steady eyes that reveal nothing. The silence stretches, and it becomes uncomfortable, but not for David. He feels a strange sense of control washing over him, a clarity he has never experienced before. Richard shifts in his seat, clearly expecting an explosion of denial, a frantic defense. Richard expected panic, justification, desperate explanations that would make David look guilty, even if he was innocent. Instead, he gets nothing but silence and a calm gaze that does not waver. The silence makes him uneasy, throws him off balance. He shifts in his seat again and repeats the accusation, this time louder, more aggressive, trying to provoke a reaction. He says the evidence is clear that David has betrayed the company and everyone in this room. He demands an explanation, his voice rising with each word. David still says nothing. He nods slightly, as if acknowledging that Richard has spoken, that he has heard the words. But there is no fear in his eyes, no shame, no begging, no desperation, just a quiet, unshakable presence that fills the room. The room begins to feel the shift. Colleagues glance at each other, confused by what they are witnessing. They expected a fight, drama, emotion, but instead they are watching something completely unexpected unfold before them. Richard's confidence starts to crack. His hands clench into fists on the table. He raises his voice again, demanding an explanation, insisting that silence is an admission of guilt. He says David owes everyone in this room an answer, that his career depends on it. David leans back in his chair slowly, folds his hands calmly in his lap, and finally speaks. He says just 4 words, spoken softly, but clearly. He says, "You might be right." The room goes dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Richard blinks, his mouth slightly open, totally thrown off balance by the response. He expected a fight, a breakdown, anger, anything but calm agreement. David does not justify, does not argue, does not defend. He simply allows the accusation to exist in the air without giving it any power or energy. And in that single moment, the entire power dynamic in the room flips completely. Richard stumbles over his next words, says David needs to explain himself, that staying silent and agreeing is suspicious. He tries to regain control of the situation, but his voice wavers, lacks the conviction it had moments before. David smiles faintly, a small curve at the corner of his mouth, and says nothing more. He does not fill the silence with excuses or justifications. He does not seek validation or approval from anyone in that room, not from Richard, not from his colleagues. One of the colleagues, Jennifer, finally speaks up. She asks Richard what evidence he actually has, her voice steady and professional. Richard hesitates for a moment, then pulls out a printed email chain from a folder in front of him. He slides it across the table toward Jennifer with a sharp movement. Jennifer picks it up, reads it carefully, her eyes scanning each line. Her face changes as she reads, her expression shifting from neutral to confused. She looks at Richard and says this email was sent from a shared company account, not from David's personal email. She points to the sender address at the top of the page. Richard's face reddens slightly, but he insists the evidence still points to David, another colleague. Tom leans over and examines the document more closely. He pulls out his phone and checks something, then looks up. He points out that the timestamps do not match David's work schedule at all, that David was on approved medical leave during 2 of the dates mentioned. The room starts buzzing with quiet conversation. People lean toward each other, whispering, questioning. Richard's face reddens even more, a deep crimson spreading across his cheeks and neck. He tries to regain control, but his voice wavers, his authority crumbling with each passing second. David still has not defended himself. He has not pointed out the obvious flaws in the evidence. He has not argued, pleaded, or tried to prove his innocence. He let the silence and the truth do all the work for him. And now, everyone in the room sees it clearly. Richard's accusation is falling apart on its own, collapsing under the weight of its own inconsistencies. The colleagues are no longer looking at David with suspicion. They are looking at Richard with doubt. Richard stands abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He says the meeting is over, that he will investigate further before making any final decisions. But everyone in the room knows what just happened, what they witnessed. The accuser lost all control the moment his target refused to fight back. David gathers his notebook slowly, stands calmly, and walks out of the room without a single word. He does not gloat, does not explain, does not need their apologies or validation. Later that afternoon, David sits alone in the break room. The fluorescent lights hum softly above him. His phone buzzes repeatedly with messages from colleagues offering support, saying they knew something felt wrong about the accusation from the start. He does not reply to most of them. He reads the messages but does not feel the need to respond or engage. He does not need their validation or their support to feel at peace. He learned something years ago that most people never understand in their entire lives. Defending yourself gives all the power to the person attacking you. When you justify, explain, or beg, you are playing their game on their terms. You are accepting the premise that you owe them an explanation, that their opinion of you matters more than your own inner peace. And the more you defend, the weaker you appear to everyone watching. The attacker smells blood in the water and pushes even harder. They see your desperation, your need to be believed, and they use it against you like a weapon. David thinks back to his childhood. He remembers being scolded by teachers, parents, authority figures who demanded explanations for things he did not even do. He remembers the fear that gripped his chest, the panic, the desperate need to be believed and validated. That fear was conditioned into him from a very young age, just like it is conditioned into most people. Society teaches us to fear judgment, to seek approval from others, to justify our existence when questioned. It becomes a reflex we cannot control. But somewhere along the way, David realized the fundamental truth. The person who stays calm in chaos holds all the power. The person who refuses to react emotionally controls the outcome. Silence is not weakness or admission of guilt. Silence is pure strength. It forces the accuser to fill the void with their own words. And when they do, when they keep talking, to fill the uncomfortable silence, they reveal themselves. They expose their motives, their insecurities, their lack of real evidence. He learned this the hard way during a previous job 5 years ago. A coworker named Sarah had accused him of taking credit for her work on a major project. Back then, David panicked completely. He explained endlessly, defended himself with emails and documents, brought witnesses to prove his innocence. And the more he fought, the guiltier he looked to everyone around him. The situation dragged on for weeks, poisoning the work environment, damaged his reputation even though he was completely innocent. People started avoiding him, whispering behind his back. That painful experience taught him everything he needed to know. The fight itself was the trap he walked into. The moment he engaged emotionally, the moment he started defending himself desperately, he lost all power. So he vowed never to make that mistake again. And today in that conference room, he proved that his new approach works perfectly. Richard's accusation collapsed completely because David gave it absolutely nothing to feed on. No energy, no emotion, no desperate justifications. As David sips his coffee slowly, Jennifer walks into the break room. She looks around, spots him sitting alone, and walks over. She sits down across from him and says she is truly sorry for what happened in that meeting. David nods calmly, but does not say much in response. She asks him how he stayed so calm under that kind of pressure, how he did not freak out or panic. David looks at her directly and says something very simple. He says, "I know who I am." Jennifer does not fully understand what he means, but she nods anyway, respecting his answer. David does not elaborate or explain further. He does not need to convince her or anyone else of anything. His inner peace does not depend on their belief or understanding. That is the core of true power that most people never grasp. When your sense of self, your worth, your identity comes entirely from within, no external accusation can shake you. You become unmovable, unbreakable. The next day, Richard sends a company-wide email. He admits there was an error in the investigation, that further review is needed. He does not apologize directly to David, but everyone reading the email knows exactly what it means. The accusation is dropped completely. David's name is cleared publicly, and Richard's credibility is severely damaged in the eyes of the entire company. People start questioning his judgment, his motives, his competence as a manager. David does not celebrate the outcome. He does not rub it in anyone's face or gloat about being right. He simply continues his work as if nothing significant happened. Because to him, on a deep level, nothing really did happen. An accusation is just words floating in the air. Words only have the power you choose to give them, and David gave those words absolutely no power, no energy, no emotional reaction. They simply bounced off him like rain off a window. Weeks pass, and the office dynamic shifts noticeably. Colleagues treat David with a completely new kind of respect. Not because he defended himself aggressively, but precisely because he did not need to. They saw a man who could not be rattled, who could not be controlled through fear or intimidation. They witnessed someone who stood firm in his truth without fighting, without arguing, without needing validation. That is extremely rare in the modern workplace. That is real power that cannot be faked or manufactured. David understands something most people completely miss their entire lives. Society trains us from early childhood to fear judgment, to desperately seek approval from authority figures. Parents, teachers, bosses, they all condition us to explain ourselves immediately when questioned. And that deep conditioning creates an automatic reflex we do not even recognize. When accused of something, we panic instantly. We defend ourselves frantically. We beg to be believed and validated. It happens before we even think about it consciously. But that reflex is actually a terrible weakness. It shows the accuser they have real power over you emotionally. It shows them you deeply care what they think about you. And once they know you care desperately, they can manipulate you easily. The only way to truly win is not to play their game at all. Stay silent and centered. Stay calm and grounded. Let them shout into the void while you remain unmoved. Let them exhaust themselves completely. And when the dust finally settles, when emotions calm down, the truth will emerge on its own. It always does eventually, because lies require constant effort and energy to maintain. Truth just exists naturally without any effort. David knows this in his bones now. He has seen it work repeatedly in his career, in his personal relationships, in every single conflict he has faced. The person who stays centered, who refuses to seek external validation, who accepts themselves fully and completely, that person cannot be defeated, not by words, not by accusations, not by manipulation or intimidation, not by anything external. They are untouchable because their power comes from within, not from the opinions of others. As he packs up his desk at the end of another day, David feels no anger toward Richard. No resentment, no bitterness, no desire for revenge. He feels completely free. Free from the desperate need to prove himself to others. Free from the crippling fear of judgment that controls most people. Free from the invisible chains most people wear their entire lives without even realizing they are trapped. He walks out of the office into the cool evening air. The city hums around him with energy. Thousands of people rushing everywhere, stressing constantly, defending themselves against a world that constantly demands explanations and justifications. But not David. He learned the ultimate secret to inner peace and power. The less you defend yourself, the stronger you actually become. The less you explain yourself to others, the more genuine respect you earn. The less you care what other people think about you, the more real power you hold over your own life. Richard never accused him again after that meeting. In fact, Richard barely spoke to him at all, because deep down, Richard knew he had been completely exposed. He had revealed his own deep insecurity, his desperate need for control over others. And David had shown him clearly that this need was utterly powerless against someone who simply did not care. Someone who was grounded in their own truth. Someone who needed nothing from him. This is the profound truth most people never learn. Accusations are really tests. Tests of your self-worth, your confidence, your inner peace, and strength. The only way to pass these tests is to not take them at all. Refuse to participate in the drama. Refuse to justify your existence. Refuse to beg for belief or validation. Just stand in your truth silently and let everything else unfold naturally. When you do that consistently, something truly magical happens. The accuser completely loses their footing. Expected resistance, a fight, emotional chaos they could feed on. Instead, they find a solid wall of calm they cannot penetrate or break through, and that calm absolutely terrifies them, because it shows them their words have no real power over you. And without that power to control your emotions, they have nothing. They are powerless and exposed. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this.